Hello and welcome to The Broken Sword. Today we begin our new series of the days that shook Middle-earth, and to start with, it's taking us back to Numenor.
Build me a home worthy of Mordor.
Throughout history, moments of great impact have not always been noticed as such in the moment that they took place. Although everyone watching this video has witnessed or heard of such an event or series of events which made history, changing the course of events that would follow in a world which is born anew in the aftermath of a given event, be it a national tragedy or civil strife, tragic accidents which are as unfortunate as they are common. This new series we are trying now intends to pinpoint 10 among so many moments that could be otherwise included. Moments which changed the world forever. Moments which shook the ground beneath the feet of the hobbits and elves, men and orcs alike. Whether it be the outbreak or end of war, the death of a beloved public figure, or once-in-a-lifetime firsts. Think of these on par with an event such as the first moon landing. This series will cover 10 important moments in Middle-earth's history and include the moment we found to be so important, and go over some of the reasons which lend to such weight to the moment in terms of historical impact. The larger an event, the more implications it will have, as a stone dropped into a puddle will send ripples outward. The bigger the stone, the larger and further outward these ripples expand, each crest higher than before, and therefore, today we're going to focus on the crowning of Elros, who afterwards adopted the regnal title of Tar-Minyatur.
No long slow sleep.
You would have a queen!
What is important to us, though, and for the sake of historical change, we want to zero in on the actions of King Tar-Minyatur in the year 32 of the Second Age, when the king would ascend Meneltarma for the Three Prayers. A devotional rite to Eru-Ilúvatar comprised of, funnily enough, 3 prayers. These were called Eru-Yurme, being the prayer to Eru, Eru-Laitale, being the praise to Eru, and Eru-Hantale, being the thanksgiving to Eru. It would be on this day in the year 32 of the Second Age when the new king, whose choice to be counted among mortals, is part of the historic significance and a decision with ripple effects that expanded outward and onward for thousands and thousands of years into the future, especially within the realm of Numenor. When Tar-Minyatur ascended Meneltarma for the first time to mark the 3 prayers, the land which would come to Numenor was newly raised from the depths. This gift of a land was just that for the 3 houses of men, who stayed loyal to the Valar throughout the Wars of Beleriand and the War of Wrath, which brought the first age of the world to an end. The climbing of the Holy Mountain would be traditional for the kings that came after Tar-Minyatur, and for generations, each would observe the right that all to follow would be maintained or squandered by adhering to or turning away from the traditions and customs which had seen them through the Great War at the end of the First Age. With today's entry in our new series of the days that shook Middle-earth, we look more closely at 2 key areas, which are roughly Ar-Menellos, the Golden City, and the climbing of Meneltarma. Of old, the chief city and haven of Numenor was in the midst of its western coasts, and it was called Andúnië because it faced the sunset. But in the midst of the land was a mountain tall and steep, and it was named the Meneltarma, the Pillar of Heaven, and upon it was a high place that was hallowed to Eru-Ilúvatar, and it was open and unroofed, and no other temple or fane was there in the land of the Númenóreans. At the feet of the mountain were built the tombs of the kings, and hard by upon a hill was Ar-Menellos, fairest of cities, and there stood the tower and the citadel that was raised by Elros son of Eärendil, whom the Valar appointed to be the first king of the Dunedain. When we are first introduced to the Land of Gift, it is a land intended and raised from the depths for those Adain of the 3 houses of men who remained ever faithful in the wars which had caused such strife in the First Age, though for those who had remained ever loyal to Eru and to the Valar was this land, their gift for loyalty and faithfulness. To the fathers of men of the 3 faithful houses, rich reward was also given. Eonwe came among them and taught them, and they were given wisdom and power and life more enduring than any others of mortal race have possessed. A land was made for the Edain to dwell in, neither part of Middle-earth nor of Valinor, for it was sundered by either by the wide sea, yet it was nearer to Valinor. It was raised by Osse out of the depths of the great water, and it was established by Aule and enriched by Yavanna, and the Eldar brought thither flowers and fountains out of Tol Eressëa. That land the Valar called Andor, the land of gift, and the star of Eärendil shone bright in the west as a token that all was made ready, and as a guide over the sea. The men marveled to see that silver flame in the paths of the sun. The settlement of Numenor is described in Akallabêth, or Downfall. From the first, it is described in images of great loveliness, and of their great culture many would hear far and wide, as, over time, the city which best demonstrates the vigour and ingenuity of the Númenóreans must be the city of Ar-Menellos. On that ground would be the first king of Númenor, brother to Elrond Peredhil, Elros, whose regnal name was Tar-Minyatur. In a solemn ceremony, a moment which would change the course of history may not have been remarked upon in its own time, as being such one of great importance. But it would be in the Second Age, year 32, when Tar-Minyatur was crowned in Ar-Menellos and thereafter made the ascent of Meneltarma. This culture would leave its mark on the world of Middle-earth, and its deeds and monuments in the east would long outlast them. Then the Edain set sail upon the deep waters, following the star, and the Valar laid a peace upon the sea for many days, and sent sunlight and a sailing wind, so that the waters glittered before the eyes of the Edain like rippling glass, and the foam flew like snow before the stems of their ships. But so bright was Rothinzil, that even at morning men could see it glimmering in the west, and in the cloudless night it shone alone, for no other star could stand beside it. And setting their course towards it, the Edain came at last over leagues of sea and saw afar the land that was prepared for them, Andor, the land of gift, shimmering in a golden haze. Then they up out of the sea and found a country fair and fruitful, and they were glad. And they called that land Elena, which is starwards, but also Anadunie, which is westerness, Numenore, in the high Eldarington. The city of the kings and the fairest of all cities was erected in the central eastern Numenor on a hill in the district of Arondor, also known as Kingsland, and closely thereto the sacred mountain of Meneltarma, which gestures out of respect were made unto Eru by the ascent of the holy mountain. The highest peak on the mountain stood in the centre of Numenor, inland in the regions of Mitolmar. If we move forwards in time a bit, the 13th king, Tar-Atanamir, came to the throne after the death of his father, Tar-Kiriatan, the first king since Elros, or Tar-Minyatur, to reign for the remainder of his life. He would hold the scepter for 192 years, and, being very proud and stubborn, his reign would begin the mistreatment of the men which the Númenórean mariners met along the eastern coasts of Middle-earth. It was in the lifetime of Tar-Atanamir where the shadow would come upon Numenor and the hearts of its leaders and people, and the king of those whose like mind would decry the ban of the Valar, the inability for men to sail to Tol Eressëa and Aman, with the king speaking out against the mortality of men. Yet this would be as far as he would go, as of yet the kings of men were not yet so bold to defy the Valar, although this point is another which changes history as it moves forward, as new divisions of the population see tensions on the rise and a people in turmoil, all in a long, unending panic as they stood on the threshold of death. Tar-Atanamir's legacy further divided the people of Numenor, and he would be known to history as the Great, yet also the Unwilling. He would be the first of the kings of Numenor to refuse the right of ascending Meneltarma and would give his anguish scope within his lifetime, clinging to his scepter until he would die on the throne, a rarity for sure until then, but ever more frequent in following generations. We hear of the shadow which passed over the hearts of men, as the shadow is wont to do, and having everything we ask for more. And that is the profound truth Tolkien illustrates again and again, that of gradual laxity, the fraying bonds that bind a people together, and the collapse of cohesion. When the kings of Númenor continued to mark the rites, the first Erukiome, the prayer to Eru, observed in silence, Eru Laetale, praise to Eru, and Eru Hantale, the thanksgiving to Eru. The ritual was performed in spring, midsummer, and autumn respectively. At the time of these rituals, the king or queen of Númenor and a number of the crown's subjects ascended the holy mountain, whereupon the monarch would make an offering upon reaching the summit. There was absolute silence in the hallows of Meneltarmer, though the king or queen spoke before the offering. When in later years the Númenorians turned their hearts against the Valar, this rite would no longer be observed. The gift of the white tree, which was of the lineage of Talaperion, brought from a seedling of Celeborn of Tol Eressëa, the tree which Yavanna had planted, that the Vanyar who dwelt therein could delight once more in the splendour of the tree. Celeborn was a seedling of Galathilion, which brought forth the seedling that would be Nimloth, the grace of Ar-Menelaos and peace of heaven, a symbol of the Valar's favour. At the time of the ascendancy of Tar-Palantir, the tide of public opinion had turned against the Valar, and the bitterness of mortals who cursed Eru Ilúvatar, not knowing whence such bounty as was this great civilization and great city, largest of the cities in Númenor at the high point of the great civilization of which, on a clear day, you could make out Tol Eressëa on a man. And it was as fleeting as a sand castle and as fortified against the Valar. The bitterness that death would come to mark in the hearts of men would see the kings of Númenor forego the usage of the Elven languages, and upon the ascent of Ar-Gimilzor, despite being the 23rd in the line which began with Elros in the Second Age, year 32, who made the 3 prayers in the same year, though the 23rd in that line of kings, he was the first to do away with the rite of the 3 prayers, and the last marking of the rite was by Tar-Palantir, son of Gimilzor, the 24th King of Númenor. Though he would attempt to reform his people and ascend Meneltarmer, he was the last of the faithful to wield the scepter, and thus unable to restore the traditions that had laid such sturdy foundations for their people and culture, their history and way of life. The next king would be the last, and so comes the Akallabêth. Although Tar-Palantir attempted to right the ways of the kingdom, they were too far gone already upon the ascension of Ar-Pharazôn, the last king of Númenor, and among the least discerning of kings when it's time to seek wise counsel. Surely someone must have warned him that listening to and following along with Sauron's suggestions, despite his fair guise at the end of all things, was a mistake. The very things that led to the Akallabêth and downfall. Sauron had been humiliated in the field. He had humbled himself before Ar-Pharazôn the Golden, and was removed to Númenor in chains. Within good time the words of Sauron promised Ar-Pharazôn that, should he turn his heart to Malkor, the giver of freedom, he would be mightier than the Valar, and the ban which forbade men the right of entering Valinor was not a rule such a great king of kings need observe. Why, no one was able to see that the king's new counsellor was a bit extreme, especially when the blades came out, and in the centre of Ar-Menelaos was erected a temple of sacrifice, wherein the faithful, those who kept true to the Valar and remained friends to the elves, were slaughtered on the altar of death in fealty to Morgoth, and the white tree that was Nimloth the Fair was commanded to be burnt on the king's word. Again, a seedling would be preserved, and this time by Isildur, who would keep the lineage alive through the first white tree of Gondor, and the faithful were to make haste and flee the island as Sauron convinced Ar-Pharazôn to make war upon the gods. And so he landed a mighty host upon the shore of Aman, and though he nearly quit his post, he went on, and in that moment the wrath of Eru was loosed and broken, sundered utterly beneath the waves, though Elendil and his sons, Anarion and Isildur, would live. So too, in the end, would Ar-Pharazôn get his wish. Trapped forever in the caves of the Forgotten, he will remain there until the final battle of battles at the end of time, until Dagor-Dagorath at the world's end, if you wish to believe in that. In the downfall of Numenor, the world was remade, the roads bent, that no mortal might ever sail west so far that they reached the shores of Aman. The once flat world of Arda is rounded, and the path to Valinor remained accessible only to those who could find the straight path, though the legends of men and lost mariners have claimed to glimpse the shores of Aman and the heights of Avalon. No one believes them, though they are absolutely glimpsing, if for a moment, the sights of heaven hidden forever, the world remade, and the greatest civilization of men to yet live would all but be obtained within the line of the king ere it broke, with the usurper Ar-Pharazôn seeking his immortality at the cost of everyone else's life, the life of his civilization and people. And in the end, he got his wish, though it is a cruel irony to give him such a gift. Meanwhile, you had Sauron caught in the deluge too, until his body was destroyed. Yet his fear would catch a wind to the east, and with the ring in his hand, the spirit returned, at last, the victor of the war. Without a battle fought, though he would never take fair form again. The downfall of Numenor has historical consequences that cannot be overstated, and the civilization and traditions of the once great people remained in their works, such as the Tower of Isengard, the Argonath, and in the line from which Aragorn, son of Arathorn, would emerge by way of the Dunedain, who, faithful to the Valar and unwilling to follow Ar-Pharazôn to his death, saved themselves and a remnant of their people in the colonies that they had hitherto established on Middle-earth. So there we have it, a look into our first entry of the days that shook Middle-earth. There are going to be 10 entries into this series, and starting with the reason why the earth was made round and an entire island and great civilization was sunk seemed a fair place to start. The greed and jealousy of men is an awful weakness for them to have, but it is shown time and time again that with a desire to always want more, to not be grateful for what they were given, men's heads could be easily swayed by the thought of having more. Albeit, not all men were this way. You still had the great and faithful like that of the line of Elendil, but as is always the case, for every Elendil you will have an Ar-Pharazôn. But with that, let me know what you think about the idea of this series. It is a fun and different way to explore some of the big events that happened in Middle-earth and Tolkien's lore, and I'd love to hear that you want more. Why not just leave me a comment of more, please, if you wish for us to continue with this series. It would really be very much appreciated. With that though, it is time for my actual question of the day, which is, what other topics do you hope we cover in the Days That Shook Middle-earth series? Let me know all of your thoughts and wishes in the comment section below. And now it's time to shout out our patrons. You guys have been amazing in supporting our short film project. We are making good progress, and I cannot thank you all enough. We have the Divine Power tier members of Kevin and Abram, the Fire Demon tier members of Nashith, Denversteel and Gregory, and the Wizard Staff tier members of John, Andrew, Jennifer, and Hunter. Every single one of you is a true legend of the Bro Hero. Finally, if you have managed to reach the very end of this video with me today and you are enjoying what you see on the channel, please hit that subscribe button and the bell icon too with all notifications ticked so that you can be told when all of our future videos go up. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.